Hello! In today's episode I will share with you what I've learned in over 50 hours of psychotherapy. It won't be easy, because during these hours I have discovered more about myself than I ever knew. It was a wild year and a half. Was it worth spending almost $7,000 doing all these therapy sessions? What are the 4 psychotherapy modalities I've tried? What worked and what not? Even though this subject is close to my own personal life, I will do my best to stay as close as possible to what I feel is true when answering these questions. I am Benjamin, and welcome to the Florin Benjamin Show. Welcome back. I believe to better understand today's subject, what I've learned in over 50 hours of psychotherapy, I must give you some context. You see, no one goes to therapy for years and spends thousands of dollars because he has nothing else better to do. If you're interested in hearing some of my story, keep watching. If not, feel free to use the video timecodes from the description to skip this part. Being born and raised in post-Ceausescu Romania in the 90s was personally a very hard experience. I have not always believed that being the case, but in the last 1 year and a half, since I started doing the psychotherapy sessions, I realized how hard I had it. I was generally considered to be a quiet, shy, and withdrawn child, especially after the 4th grade elementary school. I guess it coincided with the onset of puberty at around 10-11 years old. I remember the picture that my mother asked me to take after the 4th grade graduation ceremony. I was still smiling and generally a confident young child. The pictures that I took when I had the high school graduation ceremony are a very different story. I almost never smiled in any of them. I was always head down, like I was mourning someone. Luckily, I had not lost anyone close to me during those times, so what was all the mourning mood all about then? You hear the word depression thrown around a lot nowadays, but has anyone explained it to you? What do you think depression means? Please let me know in the comments below. The easiest way I found to explain it is by its origin, which is the Latin word deprimere, which means press down. So depression is pressing down feelings. What happens when you press down something, anything? You must use force or expend energy to press something. That's what happens. That's exactly what happens in our psyche as well. To keep us functional under the pressure of feelings we don't understand as kids and we cannot process by ourselves without an adult, sometimes our psyche chooses to do depression. And that's how I survived my own childhood as well. I don't remember exactly when it started, but looking back now, as a 33-year-old man, I realized how depressed I was most of my life. Coming back to the energy expending or usage of the whole depression thing, there is one fact that most of us people who dealt with depression know. It isn't for free. In the words of Linda Tai, a mental health clinician, quote, "What strategies you used to survive back then, they now stand in your way of living." In other words, a life lived under survival types of adaptations, it's not a life lived to the fullest. That could work for some years, but because we are inherently beings that want to thrive as well, not only survive, we have a problem. By both metrics, even though I had some rocky early 20s, other than not finding the love of my life yet, I was comfortable. By my 30 years old birthday, I had a comfortable job, in a comfortable country, living in a nice apartment with my brother. If my life would have been an ocean cruise, then until that time of my life, I succeeded to keep it afloat. I always had a good relationship with my mother, and I was working toward normalizing my relationship with my father. Around the age of 30 years old, I started to smoke some weed from time to time, and I liked it. It made the world seem more enjoyable. I was laughing more with my brother, and it offered a nice way of spending some evenings without any obvious side effects. When offered the opportunity to try some LSD though, I was reluctant at first. But I also was curious. Going online and reading about the powers of psychedelics made me want to try it. I read that people use it, for example MDMA, to treat PTSD, and that psychedelics can fast-track the healing journey. You know where this one goes. After I did my third LSD trip, my life completely changed. I would not say it was the healing I was looking for, but it was definitely a major change. In the high school, I believe I was in the 11th or 12th grade, confronting major timidity and shyness, I said, "Let me go and speak with the school psychologist." Well, a very nice lady, nonetheless, but she spent a half an hour that we spoke telling me about the hard commute and the problems she had with her children. Not a great psychotherapy session. That was, of course, the first and the last time I visited a psychologist, not until long ago. Confronted with the huge emotions and feelings unlocked at once during my third and final LSD experience, I was put into the position to finally go and reach for professional mental health help. After that psychedelic experience, I knew that it is going to be the last one, if I want to still hope that I will be not ever normal again. Funnily enough, I didn't know at the time, but normal was not really what I was looking for. Because for me, normal meant the death of the soul, living life only for the sake of living and not having any purpose or goal to aspire to. It was survival, and I was tired of only surviving. In total, I tried 4 psychotherapy modalities. The first one was psychoanalytic therapy, then EMDR therapy. The third one I tried, it was IFS therapy, or internal family systems. And the last one, which I'm currently still doing, is compassionate inquiry. I will talk about them one by one, telling you a brief overview of what the therapy is about, how it actually goes in practice, for how long I have been doing it, what are the scientific evidence, how much money I spent, and how exactly I have felt during and after the therapy. Not necessarily in this order, but I'll do my best to touch on all these points. I will link all the codes in the description below. So I started with the psychoanalytic therapy, also known as psychodynamic psychotherapy, is a therapeutic modality based on the work of Austrian neurologist Sigmund Freud. It is a talk therapy that aims at, quote, helping people uncover their unconscious feelings and memories, identify negative patterns of thinking and behavior, and overcome past traumas. They use techniques like transference analysis, dream analysis, interpretation, and free association to help patients identify these self-defeating patterns. It is a talk therapy, and in practice, you are invited to comfortably sit on the sofa or a chair, and the therapist asks you something like, "What are you thinking about today?" or "What comes to your mind today?" And from there on, the therapy session starts. Every time I did this therapy, session started like this, and I talked about whatever I had on my mind that day. I have done this therapy online for around 13 hours in total. It was $55 per hour, in total $715 spent. The scientific research regarding the efficacy of psychoanalytic therapy is mixed. The only serious study I found is a 2019 randomized controlled trial in psychiatry research that found that patients who underwent psychoanalysis experienced ongoing improvements in social functioning, personality, and self-concept 10 years after they began treatment. Regarding the possible very long time of treatment needed for improvements, I remember my therapist always saying that Woody Allen spent a life doing psychoanalytic therapy and he's still doing it at 80 years old. How exactly have I felt during the therapy sessions? Well, considering this was my first therapeutic modality I tried, I felt good that I had some support. Unfortunately, it was not able to address core issues and emotions I was experiencing strongly at the time. Psychoanalytic therapy feels like you're trying to repair a car by only connecting to the electronic units of the vehicle and changing lines of code in there when the car wiring is damaged or some physical components needs to be changed. In my experience, staying in my head when my body was boiling with terror or anger is a form of disconnection. For long-term positive results to be felt, it was necessary to come back to my body and start feeling things again. No surprise then that after these 13 sessions, I felt that same basically as before I started them. No matter the type of therapy you're doing, it is said that the more connected and understood you felt by the therapist, the better the outcomes will be. I will share some of my experience with my psychoanalytic therapist. I don't think it was related to the therapy modality, but it still speaks to what to look for when you're shopping for a therapist. For one, she dodged one of my questions regarding if she had success with any of her previous clients that had similar challenges like me. I did not get a satisfactory answer. There was also the fact that I saw her smoking during one of our sessions. I suppose whatever you're doing with me doesn't seem to work for you if you need to smoke, crossed my mind when I saw her smoking. Another thing was her telling me in one of our sessions, quote, God must have been joking when he gave us consciousness of our own thoughts, end of quote. All of this considered, it only made sense for me that it was time to move on. Because my situation was not getting better and I still felt very powerful feelings after my LSD trip, I started reading books. One of the books that helped me a lot in building a foundation understanding of what was I going through was The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. It helped me a lot in connecting the dots between what I was going through and how trauma generally impacts an individual. It offered a model of understanding that included all aspects of trauma: thoughts, feelings, and body sensations. It explained how during a moment of intense flashback or trauma, the prefrontal cortex shuts down and you're basically stuck in that moment without the awareness that it happened in the past. I highly recommend it if you're interested in finding more. I'm sharing with you about this book because this is the book that opened my eyes to the whole field of trauma recovery or a healing path that I will go on trying. In the book, I read about EMDR, psychodrama, gestalt therapy, internal family systems, PBSB or Peso-Boyden system psychomotor, neurofeedback, acting, swimming, dancing, yoga, meditation. The next therapy modality I tried is EMDR, or eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing. According to the official website, EMDR is a, quote, a psychotherapy treatment that is designed to alleviate the distress associated with the traumatic memories, end of quote. On the same website, you find the story of EMDR, shortly, quote, in 1987, Francine Shapiro was walking in the park when she realized that eye movements appear to decrease negative emotion associated with own distressing memories, end of quote. In practice, me and the therapist spent around 3 sessions knowing each other, talking, she trying to understand more about me and my problems. I met her in person. She also taught me how to use safe space imagery that was needed during the more intense part of the therapy. When she considered that I am ready, she started to do the EMDR thing. More exactly, she asked me to focus on what was the most powerful or painful part of my memory, what triggered me, and to stay there. If at any point things got too intense, I could use the safe space imagery to go back to safety. When I was in the trauma moments, she then used her finger to go left and right, instructing me to follow it with my eyes. She did that repeatedly, asking me, "How are you feeling now?" After 3 or 4 times, I would eventually say, "I do not feel any more fear." I was never overwhelmed during these sessions, and it worked for exactly what I was afraid at the moment. But because of the $300 per hour price tag, and the fact that somewhere at around the 3rd EMDR session, I started doing IFS simultaneously. I have done it for only 6 sessions in total. From all the therapy modalities that I have tried, EMDR is one that has the most scientific backing, evidence-based, being recognized by various governments and medical bodies, including the World Health Organization, as a valid treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder, or as it's known as PTSD. Now, looking back, if it would not have been that expensive, I might have used it for a longer period. Because it worked, I would have been curious to see where it can lead me if I would have given it more time. 1 year later, the truth is that even though it helped me at that specific moment, it did not solve anything substantially or important for my own traumatized mind and body. It gave me some hope that things can get better. If you suffer from PTSD, you might want to give it a lot more time and resources to work. My therapeutic adventure continued with IFS, or internal family systems. When I first read about it in Bessel van der Kolk book, The Body Keeps the Score, it made sense to me. The basic premise of this approach is that we are all naturally somehow multiple personalities. The multiple personality diagnosis that nowadays is known as DID, or dissociative identity disorder, is just an extreme form of what we all experience in our minds. IFS calls these different aspects of our personality parts. It also says that what we are, our true nature if you want, is self with capital S. And this self has these qualities: love, compassion, understanding, curiosity. This self is not damaged by trauma, and it was pure as it ever was. So, in the review of our beings, we have parts, and we are this self. I know it might sound a bit confusing. Let me give you an example of parts. Let's say after the morning coffee, you are getting hungry. So a thought comes to your head: let's eat cereals with milk. Then, the next moment, another thought pops up that says, no, you can't eat cereals today. You promised yesterday that you will start eating healthier. Let's have 2 boiled eggs with salad this morning. then another thought might or might not pop up that says, wait, you deserve something sweet though, because you had a very bad night's sleep and you feel horrible today. Okay, if that sounds normal to you, makes sense. In IFS perspective, each distinct opinion that appears as a thought in our head is a distinct part. Applying this to the previous example, the thought that suggested you eat cereal is a part. The thought that suggested you eat healthier is another part. And the thought that said you need cereals because you need a reward might be another part. So basically, in IFS perspective, we have these conflicting thoughts because we have different parts of ourselves that want different things for us. But in the end, IFS says that all parts, even conflicting ones, want our best. They might take different approaches that can be harmful in the long term, but in the end, their intention is good. Explaining self is a bit more difficult, and for the purpose of this video, I will leave it there. That it is what we are at our core. IFS is a non-pathologizing approach, not using any resourcing like safe space, imagery, or grounding, believing that all we need to heal is to access this core, self, and interact with these parts using self. This is the therapeutic modality that I have spent the most time and resources doing. I have done around 24 hours of IFS therapy online at around $115 per session price tag. It was during around 6 months period. Is it evidence-based? Yes, it is, even though the evidence for IFS is still relatively small compared with other forms of therapy. Several studies have shown promising results with treating pain, depressive symptoms, and improving self-compassion in rheumatoid arthritis patients. Did it work for me? Yes and no. So, a good thing about IFS is that it incorporates somatic experiencing as well in the therapeutic process. You are encouraged to pay attention to your body and focus where the discomfort or pain might come from. That is great because it creates a link between your mental space and your body. Of course, every process is individual and you might not be able to get in your body in the beginning. But the goal would be that in time, when you feel comfortable enough, to allow yourself to feel some of the bodily sensations or feelings as well. A normal session, after we knew each other well enough, would start something like this. So, Benjamin, are there specific thoughts or feelings that are present and require our attention right now? Or would you rather want to focus on a specific issue that you consider it to be more important? No matter what my answer was, the therapist would then generally ask me to close my eyes and go inside. Try to focus my attention on that thought or feeling and describe it in more details, where it comes from, if it is from inside the body, outside the body, what shape, smell, texture, sounds it makes, anything that comes to mind in that moment that from that feeling or thought. I know, it sounds a bit strange. You're right, it is a bit strange, but it kind of works. It works, and I would say it works too well sometimes. For me personally, that I went through this life-altering LSD experience, IFS therapy helped me understand better the situation I was in. For all its shortcomings, and I will come fast to what I believe IFS doesn't do well. IFS helped me focus on the feelings and parts of me that needed urgent attention and were in desperate need of care. It doesn't mean that I was able to offer the care that these parts needed, but for some of them I was able, and for most of them they were I was not able. Using IFS, I could see the map of the territories. That's the only thing that did well for me. Because I had very intense feelings that I was confronting, maybe postponed my entire life, or possibly even intergenerational trauma. The meeting with these parts that held these feelings was not that nice. In the absence of any coping skills, I have for several times been in the situation where after one of these IFS sessions I would be incapacitated for weeks. That means I would be enveloped in these very powerful emotions with no escape for days and nights on end. Is that IFS fault? Not totally, of course, because I did have these emotions anyway, but now looking back, I would have needed more time and I would have wanted the experience to be a lot more fragmented in a lot more sessions, so it does not overwhelm me. Having told my IFS therapist afterwards how overwhelmed the experience was, her answer was something like that: "I'm sorry, I didn't realize at the time." For this reason, I would recommend that if you're facing big problems like I had, the minimum you can do to improve safety is to find an in-person therapist that can be at least present with you in the room when these hard moments happen. Even better, instead of doing normal IFS, you might go find a TIST or TIST trained therapist. I will link it in the description, that still uses parts work, or an IFS therapist that understands the value of using coping skills and maybe worked with disassociated parts. So, was it good or bad overall, this IFS therapy? I believe the biggest value it is in the recognizing the multiplicity of mind and working with each part as being its own thing. I believe it has been more beneficial than detrimental for me, but only slightly. Overall, I consider the process being too dangerous to recommend it to other people that have problems like I had. More exactly, if you are very forgetful, if you don't remember where you put your keys or smartphone very often. If you cannot sleep well at night, you have frequent and disturbing dreams. You feel depressed most of the time. You suffer from panic attacks or other debilitating trauma symptoms. I advise you, is not a professional advice, of course, but as a fellow human trauma survivor being, to try something else other than the IFS therapy. Now it's time to talk about compassionate inquiry, or CI. What it is. According to the official website, end quote, compassionate inquiry is a psychotherapeutic approach created by Dr. Gabor Mate over several decades while working with both patients and retreat participants. This approach gently uncovers, releases the layers of childhood trauma, constrictions, and suppressed emotions embedded in the body that are at the root of mental and physical illness and addiction. Gabor Mate and its multiple books like The Myth of Normal or When the Body Says No were an invaluable resource for me during my hardest moments. I found great relief and understanding in reading them. By reading these books, my understanding of my responses and how my unprocessed thoughts and emotions impact my physical body greatly increased. Where Gabor Mate excelled, for me, it was in pointing out the obvious. People do things because they are looking for something, consciously or unconsciously. To summarize Gabor Mate's views, quote, "Not all addictions are rooted in abuse or trauma, but I do believe they can all be traced to painful experience. A hurt is at the center of all addictive behaviors. It is present in the gambler, the internet addict, the compulsive shopper, and the workaholic. End of quote. After one last time around December of 2024, when I was for one more time thrown in the midst of my enormous emotions, with no rope or way of getting out offered by the IFS therapist, I decided it's time to move on. Reading, as I said, the Gabor Mate's books, I became curious about his approach, and I checked him out. I now believe I was looking for a more holistic approach to the trauma thing and a more moderate and less painful way of working it out. I took into consideration as well that this time the meeting must be in person, no more online therapy. I found the CI therapist here in Denmark and started meeting. From all the therapy modalities I've tried, CI is one with the least empirical research backing it. There are only qualitative reports, case studies, and the experience of those practitioners who use it. How it goes in practice though? In practice, when I meet my therapist, she starts with the grounding, asking me to pay attention to my body, on the chair, and the feet on the ground. The next thing she asks me is to focus on that day session intention, if there is one, of course. There is a lot of attention paid to how my body reacts, the change in my facial gestures, non-verbal communication overall. She often, during therapy, asks me, "What was this gesture about? What or how are you feeling right now?" When my posture changes or some shift takes place, she focuses a lot on being present and staying for as much as possible with what it is present in the session. Any emotions or feelings, any expressions like shouting, yawning, laughing, crying are welcomed. She specifically asks me to allow them to be if there is space. That is very, very important for me, having the freedom to assess if there is capacity in the moment or presence with different emotional states or not. She generally offers me the freedom to go in whatever direction I need with my therapy session. I have done this therapeutic modality since January 2025, and in total 10 sessions with a price tag of around $145 per session. How have I felt during therapy? Well, I felt all kinds of emotions, that's for sure. One difference is that never ever it happened to be overwhelmed during the compassionate inquiry sessions. I have often found myself overwhelmed at home, but then I could write to my therapist and she helped me with guidance and words of encouragement. I never felt totally alone with my problems. I knew there was at least someone who gets what I'm going through and took me seriously. I don't know if it has to do with CI or not, but since I have started this therapeutic modality, I felt like I have done the most progress in my healing journey, judging by the frequency and the intensity of my emotional state. I have done a lot of reading, meditation, yoga, swimming by myself during this time as well. I have even started a YouTube channel. If you've gotten this far in the video, I have to tell you, congratulations. I know sometimes I'm not that easy to follow, but you did spend some of your time with me today. I hope it was worth it. If you liked what you saw and you want to support me, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. That helps a lot. Okay, in the last chapter of this video, I will try answering the question, what are some things that you can take home and apply in your own life from what I learned in over 50 hours of psychotherapy? The first lesson would be to pay attention to the essentials. Good sleep, good nutrition, exercise, or some activity that brings you joy, pleasures, And of course, social connections. You can do a ton of therapy, but if you do not focus on the essentials, it will still feel like you're fighting an uphill battle. Another lesson I learned is that even though sometimes what you think might make no sense to anyone else, maybe not even to yourself, the simple act of being listened to and allowed to speak with no interruptions and no agenda is liberating. I cannot tell you how many times it happened to me to see that if I truly listen to someone without judging, the very thing that they were talking about, no matter how intense initially felt, has softened. And people felt a bit better. Another lesson is that not all thoughts you have need to make sense. Not all feelings you have need to make sense. At least not initially. What is most important, no matter what emotions or thoughts you experience, you need to respect and allow them space to be. Not trying to censor, run away, or distract away. If you have space, of course. It is just like in the act of avoiding something, it becomes bigger and more problematic. It's similar with the monster under the bed. The moment you have the courage to look, it disappears. Another of the lessons which I learned during this journey of mine is that what healing means and how it looks will change as you change during therapy. Initially, you might be like me. I want all these symptoms to go away immediately, to banish them from existence. In time, I realized that healing has layers. Our own beings have their own rhythm. You don't get hurt all at once. You don't get healed all at once. You might go on for weeks or months, feeling a lot better than before, and then you step again into the abyss for a few days. That can be hard, because it will feel like you have done no progress. But it is normal. The goal would be that in time, your capacity of holding and your understanding of what you're going through will become bigger than the very symptoms that you are experiencing. You can even get to a place where what you experience, it might not be disturbing at all, and you make peace with whatever you are going through, even though it still happens from time to time. All therapists are people as well. A lot of hurt people become therapists, and some of them go and unconsciously hurt another people. If you feel that something is off, you don't completely vibe with your therapist. He or she did something that you found inappropriate or you didn't understand. Don't wait too long. Ask for clarifications, and if needed, end the relationship and look for someone else. Give yourself the freedom to experience only the best treatment and care someone can offer. The therapeutic relationship is supposed to be a safe space. That might be easier said than done, especially when you start, because at the start of the therapy, you have all your wounds or your attachments and traumas, and you might still be enveloped, but you will get better with time. Another lesson is that because we all are social beings, almost all hurt and trauma we have experienced was in a social setting. So it would only make sense that healing needs to happen in a social setting as well. Even though you might be very resourceful and you read a lot, you do a lot of exercises and practices, there are still going to be things that you will not be able to solve by yourself. That's why a therapist or a support group, even a church group, can be a good place for you to heal. Okay, in the end, have trust that you can get better. Because you can get better and you will get better. I got better, even though I thought I will never ever be able to live normally again in some moments. If you are in a very bad place, you kind of hit rock bottom, So naturally, there is only one direction you can move from there, and that is toward integration and healing. No matter what you've done or what you go through, I hope love, peace, and calm find you. Until next time, Benjamin.